Hey, welcome back to the Marketing Share, everyone. Thanks for joining us in studio again. I'm Alec Chung, your host, and with me, as always, is Barb, the co-host of the show. Hey, Barb.
Hey, Alec. Guess what? We're doing a part deux this time, right? Part
Yeah,
two.
we are. Right.
Because our guest was so fascinating and had so many great nuggets of insight and information. I think we have to bring him back, right?
Yeah. And we're talking about Alan Gonsenhauser, who, if you listen to the previous episode, we had a lot of material that we covered with him. And so we decided, I think this might actually be worthy of two different episodes. So we're back with Alan again for, as you said, a part two. And what are we talking about with Alan on this second half?
Hey, recall, Alan is 11-time CMO, right?
Yes.
So he's got great experience, and he has coached over 150 CMOs in the business, and he's the CEO of Demand Revenue. Okay, so
Yep.
he's done a lot of work in the area of private equity and advisory CMO work, and
Yep.
really parachuting into these companies to really help them understand what growth gaps they might have and how they can right a ship if they need to.
Yes.
So he's going to give us some great insight. And today, we're actually going to focus on some of the areas around what makes for a great CMO and what are some of the things that some CMOs might be missing in the areas of alignment, in the areas of, working with your CFO in a more proactive way, and really kind of looking at the infrastructure of your whole business and acting like more of an owner of the business than just a marketing lead.
Yeah, absolutely. And this comes from his experience coaching, over 150 CMOs. So he's got a lot of perspective to bring on this. And so I think there's some really, really great stuff in here. I think
And on this one, he's going to touch on how CMOs can become indispensable in the organization.
Yep.
That's
Indeed.
a must win.
All right. Let's go back and resync up with Alan. I want to touch on something that you mentioned because I think this will be good for our listeners, a lot of whom are leading for the first time, whether as just an overall market leader or maybe stepping into the CMO role. What is the, when you coach, right? What is the distinction between just being a VP of marketing versus being a CMO?
So less is more. Make sure you understand your three big priorities that will move the needle. Make sure you speak the language of business. You can align effectively with your CFO, CEO, and the board. And some people need to move from being really tactical and reactive and saying yes to everything to becoming more strategic and carving out time for strategy and relationship development with the CFO, with all the C-suite members. Think of yourself as a business person, not just the leader of the marketing department. It's a transition to be a CMO, but CMOs, you can also be very involved in the customer experience. Depending on the organization you're in, you could also be the chief customer officer. You can be the convener in chief. You could be the chief growth officer. There are a lot of, it depends on your organization structure. But if I would net things out, I'd say move from being tactical to being strategic, and the relationships you build and the language you speak and your willingness to help other functions, not just your own, and understand other functions.
Right.
And understand the market. Bring what's going on in the market to the C-suite. You should be the person who does that, tells people what's going on with the market, the industry you're in, the tailwinds, the headwinds, all of those things, the voice of the customer. You should be someone, and spend a lot of time with customers. Understand what your customers need, what they want, what they don't want. If you have a churn issue, get involved in that. Get involved in fixing that. Even if it's not, part of the marketing remit, it's really important because you can't drive growth if you have churn. And if you don't understand your ideal customer profile and have governance around that so you know what to say no to.
Yeah. I've always felt like the marketing lead or the CMO, if you will, almost sits outside the suite a bit, like almost above the business to be the lens by which your positioning works in the marketplace,
Yep.
be the lens by which the communication is coming in and out of the organization, and be that owner of positioning, marketing speak, the customer perspective. I almost feel like they sit above a little bit outside of their own discipline a bit.
Yeah, I mean, and CMO should probably coordinate the process for repositioning. But the position of the company and the meaningful point of difference and all that is the CEO's responsibility. And when you reposition the company, it's really important to involve the entire C-suite. So everybody's bought in on it. And you want to sell the problem, not the product, as Bob Wright would say from Firebrick.
Yeah.
Find out the problem, find out what the pivot points are in the industry and find out what only you can do or only you can do well with that problem versus, doing product selfies.
Right.
And features and benefits, which people don't care about.
Let's go a little bit more on that CFO conversation. Let's step into. So I think you're giving us a little bit of insight on how to be more effective as a CMO talking to the CFO.
Yeah.
What other advice can you give based on things that you've seen where, like when you coach CMOs, like, hey, this is an area where you're often falling short. This is where you need to correct.
Yeah. So, and it's easier for me because my degree was in finance. My master's was in finance. I've taught marketing/finance courses, graduate courses at local university, helping marketing people communicate to CFOs and CEOs. I think, part of the problem is I sometimes see that there are a lot of marketing vanity metrics that may be important within marketing that are activities.
Yeah.
Or how many hits do we get? Or, how busy are we? How many releases did we send out? How many emails did we send out? CFOs and CEOs couldn't care less about that. They don't care about activities.
Right.
They care about outputs. Outputs are leading indicators of impact. Yeah. Impact would be like revenue or, net promoter score would be another leading indicator of retention and growth. So it's learning how to speak business language. I think it's incumbent upon CMOs to understand your financial statements and how you make profit. What your gross margins are, what the difference is between a profitable deal and an unprofitable deal. Understand things like lifetime value versus customer acquisition cost. So if the cost to acquire customers is pretty high, you can either justify that or not justify that based on not only payback, but what your lifetime value is. There's a difference in looking at profitability with short-term investments versus long-term investments. When it's long-term investments and you're looking over a period of years, that's like doing a net present value where you look at cash flows. So beginning to understand some of those basics of finance would be really helpful, is really helpful for CMOs, and I often help them through that.
Yeah. So I'm hearing no activity, impact is what we want to focus on for sure.
Outputs and then impact. And then also readiness. What do I need to be successful? What are the investments I need in marketing so I can be more successful? But the activity metrics should stay within marketing, should not go beyond marketing.
Right. Alan, I don't know how many times you've heard this, but I've heard it a lot of times. If you had X million more, what would we expect, right? Because sometimes they ask you the top line question, right? What if I add more to this investment? Or what would you do with it? So I ask CMOs, be ready for that one, because I don't know that I've ever not gotten asked that.
So I think there are two things. One is if you have a really good understanding of where the low-hanging fruit is and which segments not only have great external capabilities, market growth, tailwinds, people are spending money, and you're internally set up to be successful in that segment, go invest there, But if it's something where it's great market, but you're not ready to be successful, fix those things before you invest. Or if so it's understanding where the low-hanging fruit is of your segments and your ideal customer profile.
Mm.
And also it's being transparent. One way to answer that question is I think we should here. We've got the numbers and we've got the stats to know if we, bring on more clients in our ideal customer profile, we'll be able to keep them and grow them. If you don't have that, the best thing is to say, can't do it now or can't do it yet.
Mhm.
Not sure we'll get the juice is worth the squeeze or,
Right.
it's best to be transparent. It's also best to be transparent about where you can cut money instead of
Mhm.
waiting for,
Yeah.
your budget to get cut. Be a general manager, be a business manager, not just the marketing manager. That's the
Well, the
difference
owner.
between being a VP and being a CMO.
That's a good one. Yep.
You have to think that way.
I like that. Okay, let's switch gears again and switch to another topic. A lot of times you get hired into a marketing position, and so your first job is to assess what's going on. And so, you're going to do this a lot, especially as an interim or a fractional
Yeah.
CMO. So give us a little bit of guidance and, advice on how do you approach that? What do you look for when you're first parachuting in?
So don't come in like a ton of bricks. Develop relationships with the C-suite and the marketing team.
Okay.
I like to interview people and understand what are they most proud of. What are the best accomplishments, things they're doing really great, and where do you think the gaps are? And I always give everybody 3 magic wishes. If anything could change at all, business-wise here, or, if they're having personal issues or whatever, they want to express. But if anything could change, what would they be? What are the 3 things? And that usually is pretty insightful with people. So I always come on to build relationships first. And I give myself at least probably 6 weeks to do an assessment. And then I look at, infrastructure, people, process, data, analytics, pricing, brand, all of those things, and then try to figure out, what's going on and how things can improve.
Is there anything in common that bubbles up out of that group that you see time and time again?
Well, if PE firms have done a lot of M&A,
Yeah.
I see a lot of dirty data, sometimes filthy data. Sometimes companies can't even get a list of who their real customers are, And there's a lot of Salesforce instances and marketing automation instances and over technology, which isn't really being leveraged. I see that a lot. I see churn issues a lot where, companies really haven't focused on nailing down what their ICP should be and why. A lot of people say, oh, we don't want to leave anything. We don't want to leave money on the table. We could get deals there. But does it make sense to get those deals? Which deals are you going to be able to keep and grow? Yeah.
How often do you find yourself in a situation where when you come in and you take a look and you realize that while there may be some key strategic things that they do need help articulating and being clear on, but if some of the fundamentals and the basics just aren't there yet, and especially like you said, in an M&A environment, if you come into a place where it's like, oh crap, okay, I got 3 different automation systems and everything. So even if I could tell you what our ideal customer profile was, I don't have the systems right now to be able to track the activity clearly. So sometimes do you just have to just say, okay, look, for the next 6 months, we have to just clean the house up first so that it functions better, right? Isn't that a reality sometimes too?
Yeah, sometimes. Hopefully it's a minority, but I have seen that happen, even with really big companies too.
Yeah.
Where they got to start some things over, or rebuild the MarTech stack and, rebuild the demand process. And I brought vendors in to help with that a couple of times.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that sometimes happens, and I've also seen it where things look pretty good, not perfect, but, we can always improve with something.
Yeah.
But, I was brought in to keep things stable during a very tumultuous period. For example, one of my clients, I was interim CMO at Brightly Software for 6 months, and that was a week after I started. The Siemens infrastructure acquisition finalized, so they were, So it's all kinds of change there. And they were becoming part of Siemens infrastructure.
Okay.
And so part of what the CEO wanted me to do was keep things calm, keep things stable, a cool, calm hand. And we made changes and we made improvements, but we didn't, break the house down to do it.
Yeah.
Alec, I've walked into a $500 million business, and half of their email or customer emails was coming back undeliverable because they hadn't updated their database in years.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I had to go back and do a whole education on database, cleansing this is your baby, and you have to protect this. This is like laundry. We do this all the time. This is a priority, right? It's like
you have to make data cleanliness a thing.
Yeah.
And a lot of companies, it's boring, they don't want to get involved. Someone's got to do it.
Yeah.
Someone's got to do it, or, your sales and marketing is going to be all messed up. You won't be able to target anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to be a champion for those that are not championed.
Right. Exactly. I've seen that too. Especially in M&A environments where they've acquired a lot of companies, have all these different databases coming together.
Yeah. Sometimes you got to educate people on the problem at hand because they don't know, right? All right. Let's talk about your coaching business because that's fabulous. And I'm going to hire you very quickly for several other things. But anyway, you have coached, and you said this, over 150 CMOs. So you've got a huge business in this area. If you could boil it down to a few key things, and I love this, how do you make CMOs indispensable? Because we are the scariest, the coldest place in the C-suite, as people always say, right? So what are the things that you recommend to make your CMO indispensable?
I help them, and I've touched on some of this, move from being tactical heroes and very reactive to what's going on to being strategic general managers that are a real member of the C-suite. Help them with strategy, help them with growth, help them with language so they speak the language of business, help them balance the creative part of marketing and breakthrough and all that's so necessary with the analytical. It's kind of like jazz and classical, being an orchestra conductor. I did a blog on that once, but help them balance that. And a lot of times it's helping them narrow down on the few things that are going to make a difference. And part of it is how they communicate with the C-suite, how they communicate bad news and when to communicate, and how they communicate good news. There's an art to communicating good news because things can be going really well, but you should understand why they're going well, how you can extend that, So it's leadership and communications. It's developing relationships with the other C-suite members. I've blogged about a lot of these things on my website, Demand Revenue. But it's a combination, and it's deciding what marketing is not going to do. Leadership is making choices. And you could try to do 10 things and you may get 3 done well, but they wouldn't be the 3 you would have picked at the beginning that were most important. So it's narrowing down, learning to say no because you want to do things that'll move the business forward. It's developing a close relationship with the CFO. That's a very important relationship to have. Not CSO or CRO as well, but the CFO is it's a very important relationship for business strategy, for not just worry about budget at budget time, but have a relationship all year. And the board, CFOs always present to the board. Give a market perspective, what's going on in the market, and communicate what marketing is now. It's not just a coin-operated demand engine. I mean, when you have QBRs, I usually tell them to split the QBRs into 5 areas. First is what's going on in the market. Second is what are all the programs that are driving brand reputation. Third is what are all the demand programs, both new logos and existing customers. Fourth is, what are the programs to improve our net promoter score, to create advocates, to drive a remarkable customer experience, drive retention? And fifth, what are the programs to make sales and customer success more productive? What are all the things we're doing there to increase deal size, to improve win-loss ratio, to give them the tools, the campaigns, of the fewer, bigger campaigns to help drive revenue? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I often think of it, what you're saying, I always say this too, but in a different way. I tell CMOs, or I tell people how to think about things, right?
Yeah.
It's like not only the data, but it's also let me give you the contextual framework around what that means. So that's why we're doing this, because XYZ, right?
That's important. Absolutely.
Hey, Alan, thanks. We're coming up on the end of our time, and so we covered a lot of ground. Maybe the last thing real quickly to touch on, we talked about it a little bit already, but let me ask it this way.
Yeah.
AI is such a changing, is such a huge dynamic in our industry. So how are you coaching CMOs right now when it comes to AI? What are you telling, your mentees?
Pick your poison. Just pick a couple things. Don't try to do everything. There's hundreds of apps out there. Find 3 you really want to learn.
Yeah.
Give your people the training and the resources they need. And Latney had a good analogy on this. What people have been doing up to now is creating a lot of breadcrumbs. They do this process and that process, but you want to, from a strategic standpoint, put all those breadcrumbs into a cake and make them work together. So think about how you're going to align things, but understand that it's still pretty new. It's very disruptive.
Mm-hmm.
So give your organization time to figure it out. And don't just think of AI as a way to cut staff. Some people are thinking that, but as a way to make your people more productive and get ahead. Use AI to help you with signals and to summarize what happened in the past, but don't let AI serve as your strategy, because everybody's using the same LLMs. If you do that, your competitors are going to know your strategy before you do and beat you to market. So, you need humans and people to think differently and hire divergent thinkers. Hire people that may not be as much of a fit in the culture, but question why things are the way they are. Why do we do it this way? Why do we do it that way? Why can't, you want to hire those kinds of people that'll help you progress with disruptive thinking, kind of like what Branson was saying. Bring me ideas that would get you fired.
Yeah.
It's
a good way to frame it.
That's really great leadership.
Yeah.
Telling his people that, give people the psychological room to fail and to try things and to learn. Because that's kind of where we are.
It's okay if you don't know, but let's explore a little bit and let's see what you learned. Even if sometimes you learned that it didn't work this way, but what did you learn?
That's fine.
Right?
Yeah.
Alan, this was amazing speaking to you. We really appreciate the time you've taken.
My pleasure.
How do people I know you've got such great content out on online and so forth, but tell people how to get a hold of you for either coaching or for interim advisory CMO work.
Well, since no one can spell my name, and my email is pretty simple: ag@demandrevenue.com. Just how it sounds. So my website is Demand Revenue, and you can find me there. You can set up a meeting or whatever you like. And it's been a pleasure visiting with you and going through. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for being on. From now, I'm going to call you AG. So
that's fine.
Yeah.
I've been called worse.
Okay.
Gonsenhauser.
Gonsenhauser.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
It means in German, it means a big family or a full house.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well,
now I really will remember it.
Yeah.
The
all right. Thanks,
house.
Alan.
That's what it means.
Thanks so much, Alan.
Okay. Thank you.